Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Spirit Rescue Talk. I am your host, Amy Major, and of course, you know my co hosts, Cynthia Maroon and Jordan Start. Because it is spooky season, we had to have another amazing guest with us today. It is Lon Strickler. I've actually met him a few years ago, and he was gracious enough to have me on his podcast show years ago, talking about my first book, Toward the Light. He and I have since become good friends, and I've been watching him through the years and all the expansion and work that he's been doing. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of who he is a published author of many books. He is also a producer. He is part of the Jersey Shore Entertainment. He does his own show, which a lot of you are going to be seeing, because I'm going to put the link in there, the Phantoms and Monsters radio show, as well as the Phantom and Monsters blog that he's been doing for over 20 years. He is very well known in the spiritual, metaphysical, and paranormal communities. We see him as a veteran of someone who's been doing this work for a very long time. A lot of good information. He talks a lot about the information and things that most people don't know much about, or they don't want to talk about because it's a little, creepy, crawlies, and all the weird phenomenon that happen that is beyond ghosts and spirits, but brings in more the cryptoids or the interdimensionals or those in other dimensional frequencies. So he has a lot of knowledge with that. We are going to have an open discussion today because it is spooky season, obviously, about different paranormal activity that might be going on around you. Jordan and I have had a few experiences over the last few days because she's actually with me at my home now, and just the two of us together are seeing some really crazy paranormal activity. And then we're going to Salem, Mass today, and who knows what's going to happen when we get down there. So we're going to be doing a lot of discussion today just about the things to experience and to let you know that you're going to be just fine, because we might have some tips and tricks to kind of keep yourself safe and grounded during the spooky season. But before we begin our conversation, I want to introduce Lon Strickler and just see how wonderful he is. And Lon, if you can tell everyone just a quick rundown on your background and any your history and how you got to where you are today.
Well, it all started out when I was a kid. I mean, I am an intuitive, clairsentient, and I didn't know that when I was young, but I was lucky enough to have been born and raised very near the Gettysburg battlefield. And I moved back up here, and I'm here again, and I spent a lot of time out there yet. But my first real encounter was when I was around 9 years old, and this was back in the late 60s. And I used to spend a lot of time in the summertime out of the battlefield. And this one particular day in July, I was out in the area where they call the Valley of Death, which is between Little Round Top and the wheat field and Devil's Den. And I was on my bike, and I just stopped for a bit, and all of a sudden, it's like a huge TV screen opened up in front of me. I was in the battle. I was hearing gunfire, cannon fire, yells, screams, smelling gunpowder, the whole 9 yards. I was feeling everything. And that lasted, I'd say, about 30 seconds and just stopped. It just faded away. And that's the day I realized that there was something definitely different about me. I kind of sensed something was going on. But at that point is when things started to heighten. And it's been going on ever since. I mean,
Wow.
I'm 60, I'll be 67 this month. And it's like, it really hasn't changed much. It's kind of waned and back and forth, but it's because of what I do, and then of course having the encounters I've had in the cryptid world, I've kind of decided at that point it was just time to do everything I could, and that's why I eventually got into the blog writing and doing more investigating.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that experience of like what's going on, what's happening, why is this happening, probably
Yeah.
led you down the path of doing more investigative work into these parallel realities that are existing.
Yeah, it was weird because I was so young and I really didn't understand what it was, and of course my parents were very conservative. They, you know, I wasn't born in a family that was very paranormal at all. I mean, nobody really
Mhm.
talked about it that much. I kind of kept it all to myself until I got older, started driving, and then I was doing investigations, paranormal investigations back in the mid 70s when I was in high school. And it was just something that, people just didn't really know about. They ask you what you're doing. They said, well, I'm a paranormal investigator. And they look at you like you're kind of weird. And,
Mhm.
that's what I put up with. And then I moved down to Baltimore and I lived down there for about 40 years and raised a family and then eventually moved back up here. And but I've been busy. I mean, and particularly the last 20 years, it's just really gotten very busy on all aspects of the paranormal and the supernatural. I've been involved in some pretty large investigations, in particular the Chicago Mothman investigation, which we started looking into back in 2011, and a few other the cryptid sightings and cryptid experiences people have had. And that's why I started working on the blog and started putting the information out there as best I could. And it's kind of snowballed and led to where I am now.
Mm. I can only imagine the amount of activity that happens during this time of year. A lot of people say that the different realities blend and dimensional doors open, allowing for more interdimensional species to come in. Do you find that to be true?
I think it's the change. I mean, this is the time of year when there's a lot of change. Of course, you're going from summer to fall, and people are kind of more open to what's around them at this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that plays into it a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think everybody's sense, and everybody's got a certain amount or intuitive work or sense to them that everybody picks up on something eventually. But I think it's just the perfect time of year for people to look into different things. And actually, it's my busiest time of the year.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I could definitely see that happening for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's mostly, when the collective consciousness starts focusing intently on one thing, it gets amplified considerably. And that could be anywhere from ghosts to entities to the Mothman. There's a lot of different species out there that people start focusing on more now than they do. And Spirit World has always told me when you start focusing on something, you move into and merge into the vibrational match of that species where you're able to see them more clearly. So I think it's just the amplification of the collective researching and investigating these species at this time. Now, there are people that investigate this all year long and see it all year long. So this time of year, it's like, yep, it's busier than it normally is. But there's some of us that see it all year long,
Yeah.
regardless of whether it's spooky season or not. But I definitely have seen a huge influx of ghost activity just in my life, and then what happened with Jordan and myself yesterday, that I wasn't expecting, because I do ghost stuff all year long with the rescue mediumship work, but
Mhm.
it's been really accelerated and really strong just the last few days. Jordan,
Yeah.
did you want to mention anything that's been happening with you over the last few days that you think is like, yeah, I'm a medium, I connect to these things all the time, but what's changed? What's kind of you've seen a lot more of lately? You had mentioned it yesterday.
Yeah, so I mean, just being here, and I mean, even like in this space now, we've got multiple intuitive people together, so it amplifies the energy. But I remember when I first came to Amy's home, I was unpacking my things, and it was right behind me, and Amy was in front, and I could beautiful Halloween Christmas lights. They're gorgeous, very cozy. And all out of the corner of my eye, all I see is a big sway as if someone smacked it. And then I looked at Amy, and Amy was like, holy. and just swaying there aggressively, almost like a cat like swatted it. And I've actually noticed, even last night, actually, as I was trying to go to sleep, there was a few knocking that was happening, and I'm like, I'm not dealing with this tonight. I'm tired. It was a long flight. It was a long day yesterday. We're not doing this. But some rapping and some knocking was happening while I was trying to sleep. It sounded like something was moving in the corner of the room, and I'm like, I'm not. Nope. And I just rolled over and went to bed. To be honest with you.
I was actually very grateful that you were there because you took all the attention of the ghost and they let me sleep that night.
Yeah, but you were telling me that you and your partner had some stuff going on too.
We did the previous night before. They were walking around our bedroom when I started going to sleep. And one jumped inside of me. It jumped right in my throat chakra and started swimming down into my solar plexus. And all I was doing was thinking about like the next day and the readings that I had to do. And it's like, because I'm thinking about communication, jumps right into the throat chakra. So I get really annoyed. I start ripping this thing out of me. I'm like, how dare you jump inside of me? I'm trying to sleep. And then all of a sudden, it's like a subway station. All these spirits start walking around my bedroom. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to go straight to bed. I got to get up early in the morning. So it was almost like midnight at this point. So I go to sleep. About 2 or 3 hours later, I wake up and they're messing with the stuff on my vanity desk. That's like crinkling paper. And even my husband wakes up. He's like, what the hell is that? I'm like, just ghosts. It's okay. Go back to sleep. We're good now. It's like, what do you say? I was annoyed they were touching my stuff. So it's been a lot of activity lately. And then Jordan got here and then it got really quiet. And I'm like, Jordan, you could stay as long as you want. I'm good.
I was taking all the attention downstairs. I'm like, go away. We're trying to sleep.
Yeah. Cynthia, have you seen any extra activity going on around you?
I've been really focused on working on some projects. So, I mean, I have activity around me all the time, but it's just normal. It's just what goes on. I know Lon's been doing this very, very long. And I'm curious, Amy's talking and Jordan's talking about all these spiritual experiences. Sometimes when you have, you talked about being clairsentient and, obviously them using all their clairs, they might have a different kind of experience in being able to perceive what's around them. But what about you? I'm curious to know what you're perceiving, maybe some like what you would consider real, like heavy activity in your experience or memorable encounters. What can you tell me about that?
It just depends. I guess a lot of it has to do with how open I am at the time. If I'm not really busy, if I'm just getting a little downtime, that's when things really start to pick up, especially just like when I'm getting ready to go to sleep. It's like I'm sensing a window in front of me. Like I see a head pop in here, a head pop in there, and it's like they're just trying to get your attention. And it took me a long time to understand that. When my wife was still alive, we'd get ready to go to bed, and we'd be laying in the bed, and I had blue orbs flying all over the place, and there'd be all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And I would just try to explain to her, just ignore it. I mean, she was very spiritual anyway, but it was kind of, after her and I got married, it was kind of different for her to get used to it. But I told her it's just like something I deal with every day. And of course, there's certain places I try to avoid going into, but with attachments and such. But normally I kind of just ignore it for the most part. I try to ignore it. Though many times I'll pick up on something that I think I need to pay attention to. But it's just, like I said before, it just depends on the situation. And of course, I've got people contacting me all the time, and it's just, can you help me with this? Help me with that? Give me an idea what's going on here and there, and why am I feeling this? And it can be tiresome, but with me, when people I start interacting with people, I start seeing all kinds of things. And,
Right.
everything just
Anything you want to
opens up.
discuss? Do you have any like a really strange story, or what was your weirdest experience seeing
Oh my
something? I'd love to hear.
God.
And the weirder, the better.
Put him on
Yeah.
the spot with all these years of experience.
Yeah, it's a lot. I guess the most interesting things I've been involved with were when I was doing spirit rescue, especially when I was doing it remotely. I worked with a team out of Wales for years, and they used to do investigations at locations, and they'd be there, and I'd be on the computer watching and listening and such. And I was picking up on all kinds of things, but it was kind of cool because I could kind of sit in the background and focus on what I was sensing at remotely as they were actually there doing the work.
Mhm.
And yeah, we had some pretty strange encounters. One in particular, I can't forget. We were at a they were at a restaurant in Neath, Wales, and it was they had a lot of spirit activity going on. They had things being moved around, salt shakers opened up and poured all over the place, stuff like that, stupid stuff. And one particular evening, we had gone in there, and the woman who I worked with, her friends from London had come to pay a visit, so they decided to go along with her. Uh, along with her on the investigation. So all they did was just sit there. Basically they weren't involved with anything, but they were watching and such. And we started doing EVP work as they were going through, and as that was going on, I was just sensing that something just wasn't right. And we literally had an EVP, and we didn't hear it until they got back home. And fortunately, they didn't hear it when she went back through the recordings. But something came on there distinctly because she had to call me long distance about 3 in the morning to get me to listen to it to make sure that what she was hearing was what she heard. And this entity literally foretold the death of her friend.
Wow.
Said he was going to die. And she didn't say anything to them. She didn't tell his wife or anything. But I knew about it. And a week later, he was literally attacked in London and killed. It was the strangest thing. And I don't know what to think about that. But it was so literal and so dark that I I really care. Let's put it this way: when things like that happen, I'm very careful about what I do or what I tell to people.
Mhm.
And I learned a lesson that day. But I'm glad we didn't say anything to him. But yeah, he was. What happened was he was selling a vehicle. It was during the day, and he went outside. Three of these guys wanted to buy his car, and while he was out there on the street, they beat him to death. And
Yeah.
this entity literally predicted it. So yeah, and I've been involved with a few cases like that where we kind of got a feeling. I've done a lot of RV work. I'm trained remote viewer. I was trained by this lady who was literally a retiree. She worked for MI6, and when she retired, her and I hooked up, and she literally taught me how to remote view.
Mhm.
And I've since that time, and it's been almost 20 years now, I've been using it in my investigations, not only spiritual investigations, but for cryptid investigations. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. But there's been a lot of different things. I mean, that's spooky enough, but I've had some real strange things happen to me involved with alien abduction and other things I've worked because I do alien abduction investigation. I wrote a book about it, and yeah, so I kind
Well,
of
and
heard it all.
I have a question for you
Mhm.
because you're bringing up remote viewing, and I don't know if
Yeah.
everybody watching understands what that is. Could you just briefly like describe what remote viewing is for people watching? And then also,
Uh-huh.
tag question is like, talking about spooky things, like when you're remote viewing, how do ghosts or other beings kind of appear to you when you're doing that? And do you find that there's any interaction?
Well, honestly, remote viewing is not a psychic endeavor. It's basically protocol. You go through stages. There's nothing really psychic about it or intuitive about it. But in my case and a lot of other people's cases, uh, it eventually gets to that point when you're getting later on into the actual remote view, which can usually last anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. But if you're working with a monitor, you're doing a coordinate remote view or a scientific remote view, they're one place, you're the other, they're monitoring you, and you're actually doing the seeing. When I pick up on a lot of different things. The one thing that happens to me is that I start to see in my mind's eye colors. Certain colors can tell me what's around me. And I've learned over the years that what I see, I can kind of interpret to what's going on. And that's when I know something's around me or either trying to contact me. And, but no, it's a process. Basically, you go through phases and different phases for different things that you perceive, and it's and you're writing things down. You're communicating with your monitor. Uh, Sometimes, and I have been through this myself. I've had psychic attacks done with me long distance where I was literally sustained injuries while I'm doing RVs. So yeah, it can get a little dangerous, but it's always good to have somebody around you, to pull you out when you're doing that. So, but it's a learning process, and it's just like anything else. And I don't recommend it for everyone. You've really got to be able to distinguish what is happening around you, but having good people with you is a big part of it as well.
Yeah. When I do the remote viewing, which is literally when I project my consciousness into a specific location with intention, I see everything like I'm looking at it through like a small scope of perception, like a magnifier, but I don't see anything on my peripheral vision. I literally see just the center, and I'm moving around looking and seeing what is that location, what's there. When I see spiritual activity in those locations, they know I'm there, because when you're projecting your consciousness there, you literally are there energetically. So they pick up on it and they start telepathically or empathically communicating with you. And remote viewing is part of mental concentration. So you're not necessarily there emotionally as much as you are mentally. So they try to telepathically communicate with you more in that capacity. But it is limited viewing. You only see fragments or pieces, or it's maybe sporadic or scattered. And so you're trying to gather as much information. And as you remote view more and more, your scope of perception opens up a little bit, where you're able to see more of that peripheral vision. But it takes years to develop that, and a lot of practice. And I agree with Lon, not everybody should do it, because it takes a lot of responsibility, morality, to know where you should go, where you shouldn't go, what's respectful and not, and to be able to step into other people's locations that could be private. You really need to have a certain maturity about you to be able to do that. So it can be abused by some, and which is why I think certain people are trained and others aren't trained in that as well.
Yeah, and that's probably the one question I get from clients is, well, you can remote view, you can see what's going on my side. Are you seeing everything? Well, you do tell them, well, I'm trying to concentrate on what's going on, not necessarily with you in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But occasionally something will leak in that, is just not really part of what's going on or what you're concentrating on. And you talk about maturity. That's a perfect word for it. I mean, you've got to know your limitations and what you can and can't expound on. And it does. That's what experience does. And a lot of people don't understand that.
No. And with the remote view, I'm not sure if you experienced this, but I've been psychically blocked by other psychics. Like there are some locations in the world, they hire psychics to block out other remote viewers from those locations. I've experienced that, and I know how to get in through the back door, which is probably not a good thing to do. It gets me in a little bit of trouble. But have you experienced that where you've seen the psychic block?
Yeah, I have, particularly with entities. I did a remote view off-world one time. It was actually just an exercise, but we were just basically playing around to see what we could perceive, basically. And we went through the protocol. And I was at this location. I don't know where it was. I know it wasn't on Earth. But I'm in this tunnel. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what I'm looking at. But this entity, and literally this thing looked like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It did. I can't, deny it. It looked like that. And many people, or even people in the field, would say, well, they can't tell you're there. And, you don't have to worry about it. Well, this thing knew I was there.
Yeah.
And I didn't want any parts of it. And she pulled me out quickly because this thing was eyeing me. But no, I tell you, I have done remote views on locations that we believed that had otherworldly beings involved with it. And I did a case, and I don't know, Amy, if you remember this, with David Eckhart down in Florida. He and his family had been abducted for years, like 2 or 3 times a week. And every time we tried to do a remote view, we were literally blocked. We got to about the 3rd or 4th phase, and everything just went dead, and we were being blocked. And it took a while to realize that's what was going on, but it does happen. And there are also humans who do it as well. They have the ability to do that. I don't know if I can do that, but when it does happen, you can kind of sense it's something around you that's tuned into you much, much more deeply than you really thought it could be. And it just kind of screws up the process. And I don't know how it's affected you, but it really hasn't been too dangerous. But it's just the fact that someone is keying into what you're looking into. And that kind of bothers me.
It does. It does. And I think it's been more, I can see other intuitives blocking me. And I immediately noticed that they were working for other institutions that aren't so great. And once I psychically noticed that, I retreated very quickly.
Yeah.
It's not something I want to get involved in, but it happens, especially when you start getting into more advanced psychic work or mental work going around. I'd rather stick to the entities, believe it or not, than people with government projects. Like, tell me the spirits, entities, interdimensionals, I'm fine speaking with them.
Yeah.
More than anything else, so humans I don't trust at all. But
I'm the same way. I can trust the other beings that for the most part I can. I mean, there have been instances that it really hasn't happened where I talked about psychic attacks, but the fact that somebody human is honing in on you is disconcerting, and it's and I try to like you said, I try to get out as quickly as possible.
Retreat. Yeah. Jordan, you were going to say something?
Go, Jordan.
Well, I was just saying, I was thinking of, I really like that we're having this conversation to a degree about the ethics, the morals of doing this work, because not to bring it to that old saying that everyone knows, with great power comes great responsibility from Spider-Man. But it's true, though. There is a degree of mental and emotional maturity and ethics, I could argue, of having some of these capacities and these abilities, because the amount of time I meet people and they're nervous, they're like, oh, you're a psychic. And they're like, can you read my mind? And I'm like, no. I do everything I can to make sure that I'm respecting personal boundaries. And I'll never forget this. In my day job, I actually got to meet a young developing intuitive. And I'm there in a professional capacity. And this young person starts reading my energy and starts reading my wounding. And I'm like, whoa. And so this person had to have a pretty candid conversation around privacy and the ethics and the morals of, even though you have the capacity and the ability to do something, should you? And boundaries. Right. And I come across many people that are still figuring that out on their journey. And I'm like, again, and the reality is we know doing this work is that sometimes you can step into something, as we were all talking about, of you shouldn't. Maybe it's time to step back, retreat, because this stuff is not a game. It can be fun, it can be lovely, but it's not a game.
Yeah. And I did learn the lesson doing that. I mean, when I first started learning how to do this and use my abilities in these endeavors, I kind of went beyond where I should have. And I learned the lesson not to do that. Not only did it get me physically in trouble, but it also got me in trouble with others. And, it's something that you learn, and it's just like anything else. I mean, you got to know what you can and can't do. And like you said, unfortunately, there are people that just don't learn that lesson and just stick their nose in where they really shouldn't be.
Very much so. Cynthia, you had a question?
Well, I was just wanting to bring it back to like the idea of, okay, spooky season, people are curious, they might be doing things and getting together for fun. Hey, let's try this together, all that kind of stuff. And although what I like about the message that we're sending today, in that, Lon said it, Amy said it, I'm at night, I've got these things around me, but I'm just like trying to ignore it because I'm in a physical body and I need rest, So they're really, even when you are repeatedly exposed to things, you still have to remember you have that sense of power and control over your own space and your own energy system. And so I like that we're sending that message. If we're encountering these things on the regular, it's like if you're just doing this, through exploration or experimentation or once in a while, it's like, don't allow fear to dominate the situation and put you even more at risk. Because when you talk about remote viewing and you go places, things can see you. Okay. So if you are seeing it and you're linked into it energetically, that's like ding dong. You're like ringing its bell, right? And it kind of looks at you. And I've had those experiences gallivanting around where I looked at something and all I did was get curious about it. Like, what is that? And all of a sudden it turns and it looks at me and I'm like, like, okay, I wasn't trying to create things, but the tag on to that is, you might retreat, but do you have enough discernment to know if you retreated back to your space alone? There's a safety concern there as well, because the energetic tether that they can follow. So there is a degree of responsibility. And I thought maybe we could talk about our perspectives about how we, keep ourselves safe. For me, I maintain respect. Anything that I'm interacting with, my number one thing is to be calm, not be in fear, and be respectful. And then if I'm coming back to my space, I make sure that I'm setting a boundary around things not being allowed to come back with me, or cutting those energetic ties and cords, or asking for the most appropriate person to support it if I feel like I'm having difficulty. But what about you guys? Like, what do you guys do?
Well, basically, I go into anything as most prepared as I possibly can. I mean, and particularly, I do a lot of research into a certain situation. So I've got things written down and got things in my mind of what I'm looking for. That's with having a little bit of experience helps you because you kind of know the red flags. But what I do is, yeah, cutting cords. You got to learn how to cut cords. I mean, when you do make that connection, regardless of what you think it is, if it's a strong energy, it's a weak energy, or whatever it is, you've got to learn to be able to cut it off, because invariably these things will stick with you, and you just never know until it happens when you do notice it came back with you. Um, I had an attachment, literally an attachment, for about 27 years that I never even knew about until I was made aware of it by a medium who literally pulled it out of me. I couldn't get out of bed for a day because I never realized how much it took out of me. But it was something I had picked up in an investigation in 1983. I was at a location where there was a lot of activity. I was doing the investigation myself. I had a run-in with this entity. I never imagined that it would attach to me, just because of the circumstances and what I knew about her, and through history and everything else, all the research I had done. But she did attach to me, and I didn't realize it for 27 years. And I've been free of that now for almost, oh God, it's been a while, but I've been free of that, and it's been so much easier. But yeah, even the experienced people can have an attachment and just not even know about it. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, the majority of people actually don't know.
Right.
That's what I'm finding in a lot of my work. The attachments that people believe that they do have, the majority of them are actually manifested more than spirit, because spirit actually wants to stay hidden. They don't want you to know that they're there because they're finding a nice, warm, cozy place to hide into.
Absolutely.
And if they alert you that they're there, then they've lost their hiding spot or their place of comfort. So if you do have an earthbound spirits, most likely you're not going to know, but you are gonna feel off, different, heavier, more tired. Sometimes subliminal thoughts will pop up that aren't yours, or you'll just get this feeling like, I think there's something going on, but I can't quite put my finger on it. I don't know what's different or what's wrong. It's usually an indication that you've got a hitchhiker, which we call attachments, that jump into any part of your body or your chakra system and embed themselves in there and either feed off of your energy or just hide because you feel like a safe place for them to rest until they transition into the light. So I agree with Lon. You don't even know that they're there, and it could be there. The longest I've seen an attachment with one of my clients was 40 years.
Wow.
And that to take that energy out of the person had to be carefully orchestrated enough so that you didn't break the mind of the what we call host, which is your client. Because if the spirit has been embedded in the different forms of consciousness, subconscious, mid-consciousness of the host, then they've interwoven their energy throughout the different parts of your personality and ego. And when you pull that spirit out, many people find that they have identity crisis. They don't know who they are anymore because that spirit took over so much of their life and they didn't recognize it. So it is a very detailed process to be able to do that. And I'm glad you actually handled it very well, especially if she's been with you that long. What was the biggest difference when you noticed she was gone?
You said heaviness. That was probably the biggest thing. I literally couldn't even get out of my chair for a day. It's like part of my being was just taken away from me. And though I adjusted pretty quickly and felt better, actually, I as I look back at all the things that had been going on in my life, I realized that that attachment was causing some issues all along. And much of what I had experienced previous to that, I did realize after it was gone that that was weighing me down, mentally and physically. So yeah, it was kind of a rude awakening, but I'm glad that she was able to find it and to move it off of me. So and it
It's really great
really
that
it didn't take a whole long time to do it. I mean, it was just,
no.
I think a lot of it had to do with me realizing that yes, she was right. There was something there, and I kind of helped it to move along as well. So yeah,
Right. Jordan and I were just discussing today that spirit attachments are easy to clear once you recognize they're there.
yeah,
It's more of the thought form manifested
yeah,
attachments that
exactly.
take a long time to clear.
I have
More
done
than
enough poltergeist cases and enough thought form cases to where, when you're going into a situation, you say you got a family, a lot of dysfunction going on in the family, you got a lot of activity going on, and you realize that you're dealing with either a poltergeist or something that's a fault form tulpa or whatever you want to call it, but it's a self manifested energy, and you got to try to explain to them that the only way you're going to get rid of something like this is you've got to tamp down the negative energy on your end because they're there to feed off of you, and it's not going to go away until you make an adjustment. That's
right.
always been the toughest thing to do with people. I mean, it's not like I can go in there and move it away. Uh,
No.
I mean, it's free. These beings have free will. I mean, these energies have free will, and you know, you just can't move them away from you. It's just like when you do a clearing.
Right.
Even if you've got, even if you've got an energy that's not malevolent, it's just there. It's stuck. It's earthbound. It's trying to get the attention of the host. I mean, to not the host, the client, uh, because they want to communicate, and that's the haunting. And but they don't understand that. Many of them don't even know they're dead. So yeah, you're if they don't want to go, you can't make them go.
Right. Right. But I find some of the harder attachments more than manifested are true entities, reptilians, and interdimensionals sometimes, because some of my experiences have been where the reptilians will come in, literally take over the chakra system
Mm-hmm.
of the host, push part of the consciousness of that soul out of the body and take over that person's body. So it's been really intense. Have you seen or heard of anybody that's gone through that?
Oh yeah, David Eckhart and his family were literally being abducted by reptilian races, and
Mm,
they were able to get into a lot of part of their being, and they eventually broke away from it, but they were kind of hurting themselves because they were allowing it to happen. There were things they could have
wow.
done that could have kept it from continuing.
Right.
But people who just don't realize what's really going on, it's hard to explain a lot of that to them. It takes them a long time. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I honestly, I never want to have to go through a case like that again because I was working with him for almost 13 years until we finally got that straightened out. And I've had cases where it's been a decade or more where,
Wow.
you got a malevolent energy that's feeding off the dead life force, what people possess after they pass away. I had a case oh God, Sioux City, Iowa, for years. It was after the crash at Gateway Airport. These two clients, they were twin sisters, and they were experiencing all kinds of crazy stuff. Their house was just right across the highway from the airport. Well,
Mm,
they had a crash there several years previous to that, and a lot of the dead remained. And when they moved to that location, they had moved from Texas, and they had a lot of problems growing up with a lot of this type of energy. It was something that was literally manifested by their grandmother, and it attached to them and her mother. And when they all moved in together, This thing literally grew, and it was feeding off the energy of the dead. And it took us years to get that thing straightened out.
Yeah. Yes, the things that grow and feed off of others.
Yeah.
Yes, it can get rather intense. It really can. But you had mentioned something about cryptids, and I know a lot of people don't know anything about that. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, cryptids are basically an energy or an entity, but it's mostly an entity. It's a corporeal entity that what people would call flesh and blood, but they're unknown to science. They're not recognized by science. They're something that we don't expect to be living on our Earth plane. But through different means, many of them, I believe most cryptids are interdimensional beings, that they have the ability to move in and out corporally. And just like the winged humanoid investigations we did in Chicago, we caught them going in and out of portals. We had witnesses who were literally seeing them manifesting and vanishing, like they were going through an invisible doorway. We got a lot of that with Bigfoot sightings and cryptid canine sightings and other types of cryptid beings. But anything that's unknown to science can basically be considered a cryptid. I had 2 encounters years ago that really got me on the path of looking into these cryptids. I had a Bigfoot encounter in 81, and I had a winged humanoid encounter back in 88. And of course, you go through all of that, and you don't know what to really expect later on down the road. But that influenced me deeply to the point where I knew at some point that I had to look more and more into this, because I was just doing spirit investigations and such for the most part. But honestly, all aspects of the supernatural are tied together somehow. It's funny as time has gone on, and more recently, and I've talked to investigators that have experienced this as well. You go into a case, say somebody saw a Bigfoot, okay, and they report it to you. You go and start investigating, and you start picking up on other things like orb activity or even spiritual activity, and they're always has something else tied to it. I rarely get a case now to where it's just one thing. It's usually 2 or 3 other aspects of supernatural activity that's coming into it. I mean, even alien beings, otherworldly beings, spirits, and such.
Yeah.
I think more and more investigators, even the old timers, are starting to realize that it's just not a singular thing. You're dealing with that other level that's just not us.
Right.
Right. It's hard for people to understand. I think more and more are starting to realize it.
Well, there's portals. It will happen, you would think. Portals let everything in. Sorry about that, Jordan, but yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, just bringing it kind of to what Cynthia brought up earlier about the protection. This right here, what Lana's saying is why it's so important to have a really good, solid practice for your own protection, because you can go in expecting one thing and you walk in and there's so many other things that you weren't prepared for. Right. Yeah. And I know, like, even working with Amy over the years, protection is number one, because you never know. And getting connected with your spirit team, getting your protectors in line, stepping into your free will, clearing that wounding so you can enforce your free will and sit in your own power is so important, because as we kind of discussed, it's not a game.
No.
You don't know what you're going to come across. And I know we're coming into spooky season. Everyone's getting really excited to explore. But I was thinking about what Cynthia said, I believe a few episodes ago, about Halloween is going to pass, spooky season is going to pass, but it doesn't mean that these beings are going to be
absolutely. I tell you, when I first started doing RVing and started working with clients, I say, and this is no exaggeration, that 50% of the people I was dealing with were people who considered themselves to be paranormal investigators and got themselves in trouble with attachments and were bringing things home.
Mm-hmm.
And you tell them that and they think you're crazy. And the first thing I'd say was, do you protect yourself? Do you use affirmations? Do you use light extension, aura? And no, what are you talking about? Well, that's your problem. You're not protecting yourself. You never know what you're going to go out into the cemetery and start evoking things and trying to stir things up. But eventually something's going to find you and grab a hold of you and go back home with you.
Right.
So yeah, and that's something I have learned. And when I go into an interview and I tell people that, I get more arguments from people because they're investigators. They think they're invincible. Nothing's going to happen to them. But when it does, then they're calling.
I remember way back when I initially started on this journey, actually in the paranormal. And I'll never forget, I went to an investigation and I was brand new. So I'm like, okay, you guys are the experts. You know what to do. So they did their protection. And they said, don't worry, nothing's going to follow you home. I was not 15 minutes outside of that investigation. And in my car, I had a whole slew of people with me. And I'm like, I thought this was supposed to keep me safe.
Yeah.
And then my team kind of came in and they went, we're gonna teach you how to actually do this. We're gonna connect you with people, because a lot of the practices, depending on what you're dealing with, and I say some practices are great for one thing, doesn't mean that other beings are going to respect that practice necessarily. Right? I had people, they were like, okay, say or do this, and the being would be like, I don't adhere to that. That's not my thing.
Yeah.
Right? So it's more complicated, I find, than what people expect it to be.
That's one thing I warn people, especially those who try to get into divination and try to use other means to connect. That can get really dangerous sometimes. You hear about people talking about Ouija boards. It's just not Ouija boards. It's other things as well. I mean, anything that you're using, any type of divination cards, whatever, can lead you into trouble. And, you're going to get yourself in a situation where maybe you're not going to be able to get out of it. I warn people about that all the time, but I've even had people who considered themselves experts on doing that argue with me till it blew in the face. I mean, you just got to be careful.
Yep, you do. You wouldn't want people walking around getting tools of the trade of something they weren't trained in and using them and thinking that they could use them efficiently. These divination tools are tools of the trade of those that have been professionally trained and went through developments and learning techniques for protection and controlling the space and calling in the right helpers from the spirit world to help you with that protection. And if you haven't done any of that, if you haven't gone through the training, then using any of these tools can open up doors that you don't want to have opened.
Exactly.
So I agree with you for there. And I know you have a lot of stories and a lot of things that people can really look into. And if they do want to research you more, how can they reach out and connect to you?
Well, I've got my website, phantomsofmonsters.com. I've got means to where people can contact me, and believe me, I get a lot of people calling me all the time about noticing this, noticing that, or something happening. And some of this, I tell you, after all these years doing this, I thought I've heard it all, but you never do. You something always comes up, and you just never realize that that's happened before. But I'm kind of used to it now. But yeah, I mean, it's one of these things to where I'm not really specialized in much of anything other than I just got a lot of experience working with a lot of different things. And, I'm kind of doing it on a whim sometimes when I get a case that I really don't understand, and I got to hit the books and the internet just like everybody else and start calling people and start getting, information.
Mm-hmm.
But I think after, I even hate to say this, over 50 years of doing this, I probably have seen most of it, but I know I haven't seen all of it. And, the paranormal and supernatural always surprises me.
It does.
Is that why you do this, Lon? Like, is it what keeps you going? I mean, you've been doing this for so long. What is it that keeps you so invested?
I guess because I care about people who go through all this stuff. I guess that's the biggest part of it, because there, when I have gotten involved with cases to where there has been a resolution, to me, it's the best feeling in the world. And there've been a few of those. It doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
You tell people what they ask you, well, can you get this resolved? And I tell them it's not like watching TV. I mean, those cases go on for years. What you're seeing is just what happens at one moment. It doesn't always get resolved. It may take a long time. And I do a lot of aftercare too. I keep in contact with my clients. I think that's absolutely important with anything you get involved with, that you got to keep in contact with them.
Nice.
And if something does come up, that you can try to get it resolved as quickly as possible without it getting worse than what it should be. So, yeah, that's a big part. And it keeps me busy, and I honestly, I hope till the day I die, I just am able to continue doing that, because I think it would drive me crazy if I just didn't really know what was going on with everybody I've been working with.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned aftercare. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does take a village to get this work done, though, which is why I love community, and I always talk about community and support of each other doing this work, and respect of each other doing this work. We're all going to have different opinions. We're all going to do things differently. We're all going to see things differently. And that's why I think we're all supposed to work together so we can see the full aspect of everything.
Well, that's what really drew me to you, Amy. Yeah, I told you this. I mean, when you wrote your first book, there was nothing out there that could really encapsulate what spirit rescuers go through, and you had it in that book. And that's why I had to reach out to you, get you on my show and talk to you. And of course, you say you're on your fourth book now? Yeah. I mean, that impressed me, because it was just nothing else out there. I have thought about writing a book about spirit rescue or something to that effect. I got one friend who's trying to get me to write about mysticism. And I said, well, I don't know how you figure I know anything about mysticism, but people try to prod you to do different projects. But but I think more people should read your book and have read your books and take it to heart, because a lot of the information that you initially started putting out there is what a lot of spirit rescuers are actually going through.
Yeah, they are. And it will continue to grow. And that's why I write more books, for the new information that comes through. And it's there to help. It's not to tell people what to do. It's just to give them a helpful hint or resources or just some techniques or even awareness of why things is happening the way that they are, and to let them know they're not alone, and that they do have a community that is supporting them, and to reach out if they do have any questions. We're all here to be supportive. That's why we do these shows, to educate and to help people. And to explain that, no, you're not crazy. This really does happen. And there is a community here that can support you in all that you do. But I've always loved your work, Ron, and I'm so grateful for having you on the show, because like you asked me on yours years ago, I'm like, I got to keep having him on my show because he's got such great stories. And you and I think we're on the same page when it comes to different techniques and the way that we do things, and I love that. And even if we aren't on the same page, we have respect of each other to be able to have a different points of view and to listen to each other and learn from each other. I think that's
I learned from you. I'll admit that. I mean, I definitely learned from you. I wish more people who had the knowledge and had the ability to do the writing and convey it would do these primer books, give people an idea of what, if you want to do that, what you're going to get into. And even people who have been doing it for years to realize that there are others out there that go through the same things you go through.
Yes, very much so. It's growing. Yeah. And I'm so happy that it is. So again, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge. And if any of you want to reach out to him, absolutely do. I'm going to have links to his own show or you can watch some of his episodes and some of the guests that he brings on as well. We are always looking for guests. Reach out to us if you feel you'd like to be a guest on Spirit Rescue Talk. If you do have any questions, concerns, or anything for my co-host or for myself, Cynthia, what's the best way that they can reach out and connect to us?
You can connect to us at spiritrescuetalk@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and we're hoping to see you guys next time.